listening to the ArtStation podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Strike, and I'm here with Alex Beddoes.
Hey, everyone.
All right. So please take a moment to subscribe or leave us a rating and review, even now. Like, press pause, click the subscribe button on YouTube or Spotify, iTunes, wherever you're listening. It really does help us. It helps to get word out there and bring visibility to the podcast. We even have a contest, I think, going on, don't we?
Yeah, we do. If you, it's kind of like a points accumulation thing. So if you follow on all the platforms, you get more entries into essentially a raffle, so you have more chances of winning.
Yeah, so that sounds like fun. All right, so we've talked about things in the past, and when we start these episodes, we've talked about Marketplace, we've talked about Pro and all those kind of things. One thing we don't often get into much detail about is ArtStation Learning, the fact that there's quite a big library of content out there. And Alex, you work on it every day. You're pretty excited about what we have there.
Yeah, it's great because every week there's new content coming, and there's a variety of content coming, and there's a lot of. It's always a nice surprise for me as an artist. We've just dropped the Stefan Walther course 8-part series on composition, and even though he's a digital illustrator, as a 3D artist, both myself and peers and friends have found it really, really useful. And then there's a lot of stuff out there which is very hard to get hold of, like advanced shader stuff in Unreal Engine. There's a plethora of stuff on YouTube for simple stuff, or if you're just trying to make like a piece of art. But the advanced stuff we have on Learning is from industry professionals, and it shows how the workflows are made to get into AAA studios, which is really insightful for even me. So it's just great. There's always new content coming every week, and it's just so much variety there. It makes it really engaging as an artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun. And I can't talk about really the full detail. We'll make an announcement later, but there is a plan that we're both working on to add a whole bunch of new content to the library. So that is going to be pretty exciting and will come soon. All right, this episode, we had a really good chat with Finnian MacManus.
Yeah, he is a prodigy of an artist. I mean, I can't believe some of the projects he's worked on. He's worked on some of the biggest films and games that the industry has to offer. He's worked on God of War as a concept artist. He's worked on some of the biggest films, Disney, and it's crazy. And then he's then gone on to start his own concept outsource studio, Terraform Studios. So he's an incredible artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to him explain the journey to creating Terraform, and he's so passionate about it. It's a lot of fun and very contagious. He was also generous enough to share some of the lessons he's learned along the way. So I think that'll be fun for people to listen to and learn from. And even the film and games, like working both in films and games, as you mentioned, like it's great to hear from him how he approaches those two genres. All right. Let's get started. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hi, Finny. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Kevin. I'm honored to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So recent titles that you've worked on: Avatar, Thor, Star Wars, Transformers, Pacific Rim, God of War, and clients that you've worked with like Disney, 20th Century Fox, Paramount, ILM, Lucasfilm, EA Games, Sony Santa Monica, and PlayStation. Is there a major studio AAA game or blockbuster movie you haven't worked on?
I mean, I've been really, really blessed and lucky to contribute to those titles. There's still a lot of things I'd love to work on in the future. I've been really lucky. I had a lot of help and friends and support, and also a lot of people that believed in me and gave me a chance. So I'm very honored to be able to contribute to those.
So you've held a lot of different roles, and there's a distinction I hope you can help me with. So there's like creative directors and art directors, and to most people you think of them, and to the people who aren't in the industry, they go, "Oh, it's the same thing. It's art. It's the pretty stuff." But there is a distinct difference between the two roles, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So for me, I'm sure a lot of people would have different takes on it. For me, a creative director is someone whose roles is much larger than just art. They handle brand management, product development. They handle business strategies, marketing, things that a normal art director would either shy away from or maybe never even want to deal with. but as a creative director, my role is more to guide the whole company's strategy rather than just an individual project strategy. So whereas on one project, I may be giving like script advice, or I may be, art directing the artist doing sketches or concepts. That same day, I could also be going into meetings about partnering with, another firm, or talking to software developers, or formulating with our marketing strategists, like all these other things that will kind of continue into the future and be much larger than just our individual projects.
So the reason I'm guessing you probably thrive as a creative director. I mean, if anyone goes to your ArtStation, there's such a wide variety of like types of projects. You've got stylized stuff, you've got game, you've got film, you've got sci-fi, you've got fantasy. Like, does all of these, having this wide skill set, does this all contribute to being a good creative director? Like you said, you're not just focusing on one project, you're focusing on all the projects. So is it a necessity?
I wouldn't say it's a necessity. I think it helps personally. I'm someone who believes that the more new experiences you can have, the more you'll grow as an individual and as a person. And that's something that I've always tried to live by and chase. My whole life is, what new experiences can I have where I'll be challenged, and then because of that challenge, grow creatively, and maybe I'll be able to be more efficient or tackle something better the next time. And I think that tackling all these different projects from different angles, having experience in all these different industries, that was something I set out to do when I was a student. I was like, I want to experience all the facets of the industry so that I know how all of them work, and then I can decide where I want to fit in. And I do think that's helped a lot. It helps to, get on one call with an animation producer and understand their whole pipeline. And then, on a live action call the same day, I can contribute the same amount of knowledge. I think that definitely helps, because it means that you're always prepared for any situation that'll come your way. You're not going to have to ask a question of, well, how do you guys actually make this movie? How do you make this game? Because I've been there and I've experienced it throughout every facet.
So at some point, you might be saying no to certain projects because they might be a bit too similar to what you've just recently done.
I think it would probably depend on the title. And, if it's something right now, the priority for the studio is to work on things that we love. And I think that is always going to be our priority moving forward. We want to be passionate about what we do so that we contribute the best ideas possible. And there are things I've said no to because I know that we're just not cut out for it. We're not the right people for it. If it's something that my artists aren't going to enjoy, if they feel like their creative vision, they'll not be able to actually, go forward with that and contribute something of their own style. That's something that, I don't really gel with personally as a creative director. When someone hires our studio, our purpose is to supply a vision and add on to, say, a director's vision, and to generate ideas and concepts. We're not really a studio that you would hire to polish up like sketches, or, to do previs or to do 3D models just for the modeling side. We're people that are, visionaries that provide concepts, ideas, thoughts, new designs, unique ideas. And that's where we thrive. It's what everybody in my studio loves to do. So there's definitely projects I would turn down if I feel they're not giving us that opportunity, for sure.
And so from minute one as a student, you were always being very deliberate to dip your toe into as many different fields as possible. This wasn't something later on you saw went, oh, actually, maybe this is a good idea to do. It's like, as a student, you were thinking, okay, I want to try all these different things and work out and make my own mind of whether I like it or don't like it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I get this question a lot when someone looks at like my resume. I've never been in one studio for more than a year my entire life. It's always been like a year, then I jump, a year, then I jump. And I've had an amazing experience. There was never a place I worked where I didn't enjoy it. I always had mentors. I always had people I really respected working there. And I've always learned a ton every time I've joined a new project. But yeah, the reason is just that there's new opportunities that I feel like I can learn more and grow more as a person. And I feel like if you sometimes, not always, but sometimes if you stay in the same place, you can stagnate. And that is such a scary feeling to me. And I felt that a few times in my life. And that's when I know, okay, something has to change. If I'm not learning on a day-to-day basis, then I'm not happy. It's just the type of person I am. I am not satisfied with that. I need to have the challenge. I need to have some growth that I can actually see. And that is one of the reasons why I jumped around so much, and why I've always, since I've been a student, I've always kind of set my mind on trying everything out.
Has that ever counted against you? And I ask this because I do a lot of mentoring with game art students, people trying to get into the games industry. And when you speak to a variety of different people at different levels, something that tends to come up is duration at a studio. A lot of the times people are like, oh, if we see on a CV, I've heard people say in the past, if I see on a CV someone's not been there for very long, I'm questioning how long they're going to be with us. Has that ever came up with the nature of where you bounce between studios? Has that ever came up as an issue? Or is it like, no, the quality of the art speaks for itself, and the fact that I'm at different studios regularly makes no difference?
I think it would have if I stayed on the same path. Kind of how it went is I worked at Sony for a year, and then I worked at ILM for a year. And I think if I continued to jump to studios after that, then they would have spoken out and be like, hey, wait a second, you've only never spent more than a year at studio. But the fact that after ILM, I joined the Film Union in LA, which by nature, its projects are usually, a year or shorter anyways. That was something that kind of contributed to the goal that I wanted. I was like, okay, well, now I'm in a position where it's normal to jump around, because that's what all these designers do. They jump on a project. It could be 4 months, it could be 8 months. Some are longer than a year. But most of the projects from here going forward will be these little bursts, and then you jump onto something new. And that's something that for that time period, eventually I got dissatisfied with it. But for that time period, it was perfect for me as a person. It was the exact place where I wanted to be and grow as a person.
Is there an example of a time when you jumped onto something new and you thought, wow, this is more difficult than I thought it was going to be?
Almost every project in my career, which is why I jumped onto it. Well, not why. I mean, I knew it'd be difficult, but every time I jumped to something new, it was always a challenge, and it was always something that I needed help with. I never say like I'm self-made or anything like that, because there are so many people that helped me during my career, that looked out for me, that gave me critique and advice. And I was always looking for advice from everybody I met, that I could see, wow, this person has a real grasp on things. My first day at ILM, I was like, man, did I bite off more than I can chew. I was instantly doing stuff that I had never even considered before. I was producing artwork for films, and it was what I wanted. I before that I had never done it, but just the speed and the pace which people worked in comparison to the studios I'd been at before, it was insane to me. It was something that I was like, how the heck can someone do 2 full finished keyframes in a day, for different projects? And then have meetings with the director that same day and do changes before the end of the day. It was insane to me. But it's something where you adapt and learn. There were so many days at ILM, and I was loving it, by the way. I actually loved this, but I would stay up to like 2 a.m. in the studio, not even doing stuff for the studio, but just trying to pick other artists' brains that were there also late, seeing like how I could improve on my own stuff, at the studio, surrounded by all this inspiration, and how I could grow as an artist while I was there. It was the same thing when I jumped onto Avatar. Like I was there, I was the youngest, like newest recruit, worst person on the team by far, like almost no skill level compared to the other people there. You had people like John Park and Fausto De Martini, Dylan Cole, Stephen Messing. I mean, the list goes on, all these legends. And I was like this, young kid who was just like really, really new. I was like a junior in the studio, and I asked everybody for advice. I asked, like, how can I improve this? How can I get this to be a better design than it was, when I started painting it? And that, I think that's something that I'd recommend to everybody, is to always be open for that advice and critique, and seek it out, because that's something that really helped me in every situation where I was challenged.
Is there a common thing that you think artists coming out of school believe that they know, and then end up in industry and realize, oh, I don't know this?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the time, because when you're in school and you get to pick kind of the subject matter, like maybe you get an assignment that says, do a keyframe or do some designs. You get to pick what you do. So you have this whole history of like, whatever, 2 to 4 years of doing exactly what you want, and like picking the subject matter, the lighting, all this stuff. And then when you get to a studio, you're not doing those flashy keyframes. There's almost nobody I know that went from art school to instantly doing like these beautiful rendered keyframes and designs. most of the time a junior artist, at least if you're going straight into games, which is usually the choice or usually the route that's available, you'll be doing call out designs, which are, if you guys don't know, they're like these flat designs that are like orthographics essentially for other 3D artists to build props. When I was on God of War, a lot of the stuff I was doing, which I'll never be able to show or put in my portfolio, was like floor trims. Like I was on floor trims for like 3 months. And previously to that, I had been doing these huge epic environments and landscapes with characters in them. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be it, But you quickly realize when you join a studio, like, man, I have so much to learn. I'm really behind, actually. Like, these people have so much skill and expertise on me that the only thing I can be trusted with is a floor trim. So it's at that point that I think students kind of have to, it's a really testing point. It's like, are you able to come from the top of this mountain and start all the way at the bottom and work your way back up and learn everything in a new way? A lot of the stuff I learned in a studio was contradictory to what I learned as a student. It was like I learned one way as a student, and actually the information was outdated and I had to relearn it as a professional. And, different studios have completely different ways of doing things. You may learn one thing in one studio and then you jump to another studio and they have a totally different design approach. So that's the main thing I would say. Sorry, long-winded explanation, but I would say students should consider that they're going to be, starting at the basics again. And that's actually a good thing because it means you really learn to design the right way.
It's funny you mentioned that as a junior, like I said, like God of War, you're doing a lot of the call out stuff because you're basically my best friend. I'm a 3D artist. I love that stuff because for me to create environments, them call out sheets can make it so much easier to work out in space. I don't get me wrong, I love the big beautiful vista shots and the key shots, like they're great. But in terms of building an environment from them or like building 3D from them, it's like, okay, I still have to interpret a lot of stuff. Whereas them call-out sheets, it's like, oh, they've done all the thinking for me. I'm just going to make it, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's super helpful, right? I don't think you can do many games without it. So it's what it is.
So it's rare to get to speak to somebody who is so aware of their learning process and where they've come from. Now, as you know, probably most of the things you really learn in your career probably came from mistakes. You don't learn things from winning, you learn from your mistakes. So what kind of things have you tripped up on in the past that's really been like, oh shit, I need to learn from that?
Oh, dude, every day, man. I mean, it's really like, especially now that I have the studio, it's every day. But I would say, back in the day, it's hard to know where to start. I try to fail all the time. I would, especially as a student, now that I have a bit more responsibility, so I can't be as rash with things, but I would try to push myself to something that I felt like I couldn't do because I would learn to do it better. So it could be taking on an environment piece in my spare time where I was like, man, how do I do this from this angle? Like, this perspective is ridiculous. And no one would try to attempt this, but I'm going to try it to learn from it. There are many times where, I would say I failed the most on God of War because I was so new. I remember doing some floor designs for this one hallway, and I literally spent like 2 days on floor designs, and it turns out not even one of them was correct. They were all too busy. I was looking at this floor and I was like, man, how can I make the coolest floor possible? Right? Like, how can I really, and at that time, I was like, man, I need to show these guys that I can design. Like, I need to do something cool. And it turns out, and I wasn't thinking correctly, it was like, you don't want the floor to be the coolest design. You don't want to, walk into a room where there's enemies and some huge glowing crystal and the floor is decked out with like 80 intricate patterns. It's going to distract you. You're not going to be able to understand the narrative and the gameplay. So not even one of my designs got approved. And I went back to the drawing board. But it's things like that where you want to push yourself to be, you're going to fail. And I think that's what a lot of people don't like. they want to stay in the comfort zone. I mean, this is a cliche because everybody talks about this, but you want to stay in your comfort zone. You're good at what you do. But if you don't go there to that, deep, dark abyss that you're like, oh man, I'm really scared. What if I really screw up? If you don't go there, you're not going to grow. It's just simple. It's like you can't wait for your life to change, for some, messenger from heaven to come down and give you the secret of knowledge. You have to go out there and seek it yourself and fail and try again. And I think I got addicted to that process of failing. I was like, man, if I fail today, I'm going to learn. And if I learn, that's great. So, A and B, I'm just going to get better. So, there's still a lot of areas that I want to spend time in. For me, I need to learn to do characters better. I think that's the next thing I'm going to really focus on. But, it's happened in all areas for me. It's happened in time management. It's happened in negotiation. I recently had it in contracts, in product development, and all these things. And there's another thing that goes along with that. Like, say you spend 3 years learning 80% of a skill, and that 20% that's left might take you another 3 to 4 years, maybe even longer, to become a master of it. For me personally, I'm happy being at that 80% and spending another 3 years learning something completely different, because that 80% I'll learn and that new skill is all completely new knowledge that may even help me with all other aspects of my life. I'd be more content. I'm not saying be a jack of all trades, because I've always been against that, but I'm content in learning something completely different. Like, for me, that was business. It was like, I've become a good designer. I'm confident with my abilities. I've worked for some good companies. I love what I do, but I could still focus. I could stay in the same place and still jump from movie to movie and become an even better designer. It's going to take a lot longer to get that last 20%. Or I could start something completely new, learn every single day again, and learn completely new things. And for me, that was a really great decision, because you pick up more things every day. I'm learning way more now on the daily than I was when I was an individual designer, if that makes sense.
But I guess as well, you're essentially future-proofing yourself, because as you pick up new skills, you never know, there's Murphy's Law, anything can happen. Software goes out of, becomes redundant, techniques become redundant, complete pipelines can become redundant. It's like, if you stand still and be like, okay, I'm just going to be this one type of artist and I'm going to dominate this space. It's kind of like, yeah, but what happens when that space disappears and you no longer have a job? Like,
you're right.
I guess by being the kind of guy who can sidestep into multiple fields and make sure I'm not saying you're going in, okay, this is my only space now. It's like, you added feathers to your cap, I guess, being like, okay, I've got a bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of this. Oh, this piece is gone. Okay, I can rely on this. And the way someone gave me a really good analogy for this, it was, imagine you got an oil rig and it's got it's got 5 pillars holding it up. Instead of having one gigantic pillar that if it falls down, the whole rig comes down, it has 5 pillars. And if one comes down, it's okay. You can put it back together when you're ready, but you've got the other 4 supporting you. It's really, but the thing is though, you said this is when you briefly mentioned, I just want to dive into it. You said you're against jack of all trades.
Yes. Yeah,
now,
I can talk more about that.
Yeah, please do, because I hear arguments from both sides, and I'm kind of like, I see the pros to both sides of it, and I haven't really got my mind made up. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is very complex, because there's so many different situations and paths you can walk in life, and I can only speak to my experience and things I could have done differently and things I'm happy about with my decisions. Looking back on my life, I would not have changed a thing from my progression as an artist, because of the people I met, the things I learned. But speaking of that experience, I'm definitely against being a jack of all trades from the get-go. I think that it depends on the person. If you want to go the route of like a film designer, working on these titles like AAA game titles and movie titles, and you want to be the person that designs that spaceship in Star Wars or designs a droid or something like that, then jack of all trades is not the way to go. And the reason is that on those productions, like the larger productions, they get specialists from every field. They have a specialist character. They have a specialist environment. At Sony, when I joined, nobody did both characters and environments. They had an environment team, a character team, a creature team, and they all functioned independently. They all, collaborated and art directed each other and fed into this huge, great process, but they're all individuals as well. And I think one of the big mistakes that students make is that they want to chase these large projects in their life. And they say, well, if I can offer them also character, also environment, also vehicles, all this stuff, keyframes, storyboards, then won't that make me a better choice? And the answer is no, unfortunately, because you've just divided up, your 5 years of learning in one subject. You divided it up into 1 year per subject. And it's like if you were, let's use another analogy. It's like if I want to play piano and play guitar and play drums, I could spend 5 years playing piano and be the best, pianist I can be. Or I could divide it up and just be all right at all of them. It's a similar thing with concept art. There's a certain amount of skill you get that's inherently from studying other aspects of concept art. One of the biggest sayings is that if you learn how to do vehicles, it'll reinforce other areas. If you learn how to do figure drawing, it'll reinforce other areas. That's true. But there's nothing that compares to in-depth knowledge of a specific subject. And that is the issue with being a jack of all trades. There's a lot of students that talk to me and it's like, why can't I get a job at this company? And it's because, from the company's perspective, they don't want someone who can do an okay job at everything. They want someone who can be a master at one thing and then hire 4 other masters to do the other areas. So that's the first point I'll make. Now, where that gets a bit more complex is that when you get to very high level concept art where, suddenly everybody's really, really good at this one thing. And, going back to what I said about jumping into other businesses, I'm confident enough with my skill at environment design, at keyframe design, at film, that I feel like I'm a specialist in that area. Like I feel confident that I could approach any film and do a good job on designing with the director. Now that I've reached that point in my career where I'm happy with that, I am now ready to jump into something else and specialize in that field too, as another specialization. I wouldn't consider myself a jack of all trades still. I consider myself a specialist. But I feel like I've earned enough experience and growth to be able to branch out into a new area and really dive deep into that and learn all the ins and outs. I'm not now that I've done, this one track, I'm not going to start 10 other tracks at once. I'm just going to focus on one more thing I'm adding to my arsenal and really going deep into it. And, one of the things that, I want to talk about is, a lot of people, when I launched the studio, some people had asked me, are you a jack of all trades studio? No, we are not. Terraform Studios is not a jack of all trades. What we are is a specialist studio in all areas. We don't have artists that will do characters, keyframes, vehicles, creatures all in one artist. We have a specialist in every single area that, they've made it their life goal to be amazing at what they do. And that's what I would call like a specialist studio. We can handle anything you throw at us. We can do a great job, but that's only because we have people that are masters at their craft in those specific areas. So I hope that answers your question.
Can that be distilled down even further so looking at, again, if we look at your portfolio, you got a variety of subject matter of like context. You have Ad Astra, one end of the spectrum, and like take Pikachu, the other end of the spectrum, yeah. Lion King.
Yeah.
Can people specialize that step further? So say like, okay, I am a specialist vehicle designer. Okay, now I'm a specialist sci-fi vehicle designer.
Oh yeah.
Does that happen as well? Do people say, okay,
oh, yeah.
I'm a specialist in this medium and this theme?
Definitely. I know a lot of artists that do really well that are like that. The only issue with that is that it limits you. There's a fine line. There's like a line you want to. It's like you have a dartboard and you have like 8 darts. If you're doing that with like sci-fi vehicle, that dart you throw has to ace it every single time, or else you're not going to get work. But if you can also do fantasy, also can do like a realistic style, you have a couple more darts at your disposal. I think that people who specialize even further, like I said, it's like that extra 20%. It's like they are so good at what they do that they've specialized to the point where like they're the best in the world. I know a few designers who will always be employed for that very small specialty, that they're the best in the world at what they do. There's no one else that can touch them. But what happens if in 1 year, there's no more sci-fi films, or, there's less fantasy films, or in that area, they don't have as many films going on? Well, there's going to be an issue. So the thing for me is that, I love environment design, but I also love all these different aspects of it. And I wanted to to try to learn from every aspect when I delved into it.
Is there a specific? Could you list out the categories that you would break into? Like, hey, get the 80% level in these areas.
Oh yeah, in the different areas. Yeah, sure. So I would say, the biggest ones, environment and character design. Those are like the two staples that every production will always need. After that, I would say keyframe, vehicles, and creature design. A lot of creature designers can also do character designs, but some creature designers prefer only to do creatures. So after those, 5 categories, you don't really see too many specialists outside of that. You could see storyboard artists, but storyboard is a different industry, so I wouldn't even really count it. I would say, and by the way, those subjects I was talking about is for live action film and games. When you get into animation, you have other specialties, like people who do color keys for film. There's certain artists who only do color keys and are really, really good at that. And, that's something that can last a whole production in an animated film. There's people that are in animation that are specifically skilled at story moments, that only do like story keyframes, and they can design everything inside that keyframe, and then those designs may be taken further by another artist later. So those are the 5 I would say is character, environment, creature, vehicle, keyframe. And other people might disagree with me, but those are the things that pop up the most in my field.
And I just want to come back to one thing you were talking. I just want to come back to the games thing with God of War. Was it a frustration for you? Because obviously with film, you don't think about optimization. You don't think about it too much. You're like, let's just make this look as good as we can physically make it. Let's do every detail that we need to do. With games, there's 2 components. I guess you've got one, you don't get to control the audience's point of view, so therefore things have to read well, you're moving very fast. The other thing is optimization. I've spoken to a few designers in the past where it's like they come up with an amazing design and it doesn't make it because we can't have more than 3 designs, so they're like, okay, we'll just work with the ones we got. How is that an emotion you ran into when you're working in games, or is it like no?
So yes and no. Back then, yes. Now, no. And there's a reason why, and I'll explain that. When I was on God of War, working as an in-house artist, at that point, my personal worth and style were kind of non-existent. I had a style as a student, but no one knew who I was. Like, I was just a guy. I was a good designer, and they hired me so that I could assist the production, not with my style, but just as a designer would. And there were so many things I did that, like you said, they wouldn't have fit into a normal game production pipeline. Like, I can recall there's a prison in the Alfheim trenches in God of War, and I had designed some prison doors for that. And my doors, again, I had this novice mentality, this early newcomer mentality. Man, I got to make these doors cool. Got to make these doors cool, man. And I had designed this animation. And I was like, I'm going to go above and beyond, dude. I'm going to do an animation where there's like 5 frames to how this door opens. There's going to be like 12 different spikes that interweave into a Celtic knot. And then when you get closer, going to pull out slowly at different intervals. And it's going to be the coolest prison door you've seen. And then as soon as I presented it, they're like, we can't animate for this door. This is just a prison door. This is like such a low level in terms of the game. Like, this is a hallway you go down. You go down a hallway. There's no reason that this door gets a production budget to be animated. You can't. It should just open and close, man. And I was like, oh, God, like, there goes, the last day of sketching. And so, yes, I bumped into that a lot. I think that it's similar where, like, your first year in game design, you'll learn how to adapt and deal with that. After I messed up with that animation thing, I never did it again. I was like, okay, I realized now I'm going to adapt. I will never make that mistake again. And I never did. And I think it's a buildup of those instances in terms of where you're talking about where, like, if you make a mistake on optimization, you're going to understand why. Hopefully they'll explain to you why, and then you'll never have to make that mistake again. Now, the difference now, I worked on a few games this year, and I never run into that problem anymore. And it's actually less because of optimization or even the process. It's just because of why people hired me. I'm now hired because of my specific style and design taste. And they're going to resolve all that stuff down the line. They don't care about, how crazy I go. as long as I give them a really good idea and that they're going to figure out how to make it work. So it's no longer my job to figure out how to make it work. It's my job to supply them with something that's really interesting and unique. And, they'll figure out if they can do it or not. So that's kind of how it changed and why it changed to how it is now for me.
It's quite funny, actually. I'm just thinking there's a weird parallel between the process of a young designer, 2D designer, to 3D. It's the exact same thing for 3D artists, I find. Like when I've mentored, I've worked in studios in the past, and when you're a junior, the thing you say to juniors is don't make it a hero prop. A lot of the time, juniors get given simple props. They're not making the main thing, but they spend like all this time making this really perfect, amazing prop, and it's like, dude, it's a piece of clutter in the corner of the room. Do not waste your time with this. Like, it's not the main hero. Yeah. And it's exactly what you just spoke about. It's like, okay, we're literally running through this corridor. We don't need a crazy door. We just need a door, like, which functions. It doesn't need too much attention. It's just weird. It's just funny, like, when there's, even though they're two completely different disciplines, they're basically the exact same process, the exact same mindset from that junior mentality. But with that now, though, like, so you're at that stage then where you, like you said, people hire you for you. They're not hiring. They're not trying to fill a gap in the job production. Yeah. They're hiring you for you. Does that mean then, like, how picky are you? Like, for your personal, just you, not like company wise. Do you now get to the point where, like, okay, I've earned my stripes. I have tried my hand at all these different things. I know what I like doing. I'm gonna say that. Or are you still in that mindset of when it comes to art, not business, nothing like that? When it comes to art, are you still like, no, let's try this thing I've never touched before? Like, because you have the luxury now to be a bit more picky. Do you find something like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's projects. I mean, I assess every project. I'm like, am I going to be able to grow and have a great time on this? If it's a project where I'm going to be challenged, but I hate the subject matter, I'm not going to take it. I have to, really appreciate the IP. I don't just agree to a project because it's a studio. I understand what they're working on first. And if I agree with that, like, okay, this is going to be interesting and fun, and I'll be able to try out new things that I haven't tried before, then I'm like, yes, this is a project I want to be a part of. And that's when I'll actually accept something.
I do find sometimes that you go after projects that you might have become interested in because you've seen something and then you're like, oh, I really want to work on that. I'm really a fan of that. And let me see if I can work on a project.
Not in recent times. I would say just because of how the industry is, it's pretty spontaneous.
Yeah.
I don't have too much time to actually look for the projects. A lot of the time, the contracts I'm on will be scheduled, many months to, if not a year ahead of time. So there's not as much time to find something. I've been very lucky in the way that when they do come in, I'm like, wow, I've heard about that before. This is something I would love to do. There's been a few instances where things that I heard were in development, and I was like, in my head, I was like, man, it'd be amazing to work on that one day. And then suddenly an email arrives, and I'm like, wow, this is a dream come true. Like, when that happens, it's the best. It's the best. And this year I contributed to something that was more than a dream project. It was like something that I grew up with, and it won't be out for a few years, but it's something that I grew up with that impacted me so much in not only, the person I am, but also the design style and the types of genres that influenced me. And when things like that happen, it really, you kind of look back at your life and you're like, wow, how crazy is that? Like, how did this coincidence occur? And I would say that most of the time, and especially for the studio now, we schedule everything so far in advance. We don't really chase projects. They'll come in and we decide if we want to take it or not.
Just a curious question, since we spoke about parallels earlier. When you talk about working on dream projects, I think this might be an opposite for the 3D community, because a lot of the time with the 3D community, the warnings always don't go work on your dream game, don't go work on your childhood game.
Really? Why?
Because when you're doing 3D, you're in the nitty gritty of it, and there's problems, and you're making. So this is one of the things I hate about game art, is that the optimization side of stuff, you have to sometimes butcher great art for the sake of optimization. But a lot of people, because you're in it for so long, a game production is anywhere between 3 to 5 years. You almost grow sick and tired of it. And I've heard a few people, so like Horizon Zero Dawn, one of my favorite games, and And I'm like, oh, this is a fantastic game. I don't know anyone who doesn't like it. I know devs on there who are like, yeah, I couldn't even play it. I don't want to play that game. I love the story, everything, but I can't look at that. Like, I'm so fed up of it. And it sounds like for you, though, when you meet the whole Meet Your Hero moment where you work on an IP you've always wanted to, it's a completely different emotional feeling, right?
Well, yes and no. I recognize what they're talking about, absolutely, because I don't think, just with the type of person I am, with the attention span I have, working on something for 3 years is never going to be a possibility for me. I'd self-implode. I need to have a constant. That's one of the reasons that I did the company, was because there's a constant change, and that doesn't happen to me. I don't experience that because I've always sought out the change, but I can definitely tell, I could easily say that if I had stayed in the same place for more than a couple of years, I would feel that for sure. I'd feel the emotional burnout, the burnout of working on the same thing for so long. I totally sympathize with those people, and I now see the issue. And especially, I think, more so than concept artists, I feel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but I feel like 3D artists are expected to stay for the long haul. Concept art has become something where, especially more in recent years, it's pretty normal for a concept artist to be like this deployable Marine that'll go on one project and, clear something up, then go on another project and clear something up. But I feel like for 3D artists, it's usually supposed to be like, you join a project, you stay there, you become part of the family. Is that true?
Yeah, you become part of furniture just because 3D has got pipelines. If you're building like a pipeline, you're the brains behind it. It's like this whole section. Okay, this person built it and he knows how, or she knows how they put it together. We kind of need you to stick around.
Exactly. See, that makes sense. Yeah.
But this is an issue I kind of have with I'm talking about the games industry, but it sounds like it's the same for film as well. In that, people are expected to, even 3 years, you can't, settling down for 3 years isn't that long in the grand scheme of things. You can't settle down properly. Like you said, you're always jumping around. Now, for those who like that, it's great. But is that also a problem for the wider industry in the sense of not everybody can or wants to move around? Now, part of me is kind of like, maybe this is fixed with everything that's gone on in the world with COVID. Remote work becoming far more applicable. I've seen studios being, so up until this point, studios have been very anti-remote. They've, for IP reasons and security reasons. But recently, I'm seeing some very big studios being like, okay, we're considering remote now. So maybe this issue is no longer an issue. But what you just said about being a deployable Marine.
Yes. So let me expand on that. So it's totally an issue more so with film than anything. And I know a ton of people, actually probably the majority of people in film, who hate having to move around project to project. There's a lot of times that an art department could last 4 to 5 months, and that's nothing. Imagine having to chase jobs so often. Some of these people have kids that they're putting through college, chasing jobs every, 4 months, and it's only going to last for a bit. So you're never like relaxed. And that's something that I consider. And it's why I'm doing this at the point I am in my life, so that when I do have a family one day, I'm able to settle down more. And it's definitely a problem in film. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to change just because of the nature of the film industry. Many productions don't have the budget to have a team of concept artists for years. I don't think other than Avatar and Star Wars, there's not many people that can actually do that. There's a few movies out there, but really they're few and far between. So yeah, I do think that's a problem. The union in LA really helps with, it helps partially with keeping people employed. They'll notify people of jobs. You get contact with production designers. But all in all, it is you have to know what you're getting into. If you're the type of person that likes to relax for 3 to 5 years, film is not the right place. It moves very, very quickly.
And you don't think that there's any way that's going to change? Do you think the remote thing gets affected?
Not is going to change at all. The issue isn't even with the jobs. It's just with the nature of making a film. Until you have more films that are like $500 million budgets, you're not going to see art departments that last more than a year or 2 years because it costs a lot. Hiring an art department is really, really costly. Obviously not as much as an actor, and especially for what it's seen as. I think art department is getting more respect nowadays than it used to. but it's still not seen as, the selling or defining part of the movie. The actors, actresses are always considered way, way higher up. And, cinematographers, we're pretty low down on the budgets while being pretty expensive for illustrators. Concert art is pretty expensive to have a team of 6 to 8 people employed for the whole production. So really, it's not going to change. The only thing I'll say is that Marvel movies, because Marvel and Disney are doing so well recently, those movies are able to employ a lot of people. And the industry is really thankful to those studios because they're able to actually bring a lot more people into the film industry because of those movies. Regardless if you like Marvel or Disney, I'm just saying it's good for business. It keeps people employed longer. And, I would say the movie industry has overall done well, but if it gets better and it makes more money, that's when you would start seeing those problems change. It's when people would hire people on for a longer duration.
Do you have a favorite between game and film?
Man, it's so hard to decide. No, I don't. It's something I've considered for a long time. I'm almost always on both at the same time. And I think that having that really keeps my mind in an open area because the production pipeline is really, really different between the two. The things you have to think about, it's almost like speaking 2 different languages at the same time, but with some overlaps between the syllables. It keeps me on my toes, and I get to learn different things from both that I really enjoy. And, I feel like a lot of the times in games, I feel generally in games, you can be a lot more free. When it comes to the work I do, I'm allowed to be more free and open with the creative side with games because there's generally a much longer time for exploration, which is where I have the most fun. Exploration is definitely the most fun for me, blue sky development. Whereas in film, it's pretty rare that you're going to be on a film where they're just give us ideas. That's happening for me right now, but it's also those projects are hard to find. Usually a director and production designer will be very specific about what they want. And they're like, we want you to illustrate this scene. And there's areas for you to contribute. But it's very rare. Like I said, I'm very lucky. I'm on a project where I'm able to contribute ideas. And that sort of thing is like a dream within a dream. It's like working in film is a dream. Working on film where you get to contribute a creative idea, that is very special and you want to treasure it. So I think both are very useful. I get to kind of stretch my mind in terms of creativity in games, and in film, I get to be very specific about defining something, the technical skills, speed and efficiency, and being able to learn from directors and from writers is something that I really enjoy as well. Being able to talk to them about why they make the decisions they do on a script and why certain metaphors, they're putting in there and what the imagery is meant to explain. Things like that is really nice for me to have as an artist and designer because it's something, again, that I don't know much about that I'm trying to grasp and learn more about.
Can you dive a bit more into that? So just with regards of your interactions with, say, the directors, how much difference, what does the interaction look like in a director in games versus a director in films? Is the conversation purely different because of the subject matter, or is you mentioned you speak in a different language sometimes?
Yeah. So first thing I'll say is that in games, I'm almost never interacting with a game director. Actually, I don't think I don't think I have interacted with a game director in games. And the reason is that they have so much else on their plate that, and because of the stage where you have concept art, it's very rare to be in that position to have one-on-one time with the game director all the time. Usually they're dealing with so many other aspects, story being one of the main ones. So usually on the game side, I'm talking with either the lead art director or one of the art directors. And that's where my studio and me as an individual come into play. In terms of film, most of the time, I would say nowadays, it didn't used to be like this, but most of the time I'm in the phase of production where there's a script that is being revised and there's a director, maybe a producer and a writer, and sometimes a production designer. So it's very, very early in the film process. It's like they've been greenlit already, or maybe they're on the way to be greenlit. And it's really fun. It's compared to how it used to be for me. When I started in the film industry, a lot of times I would never see the director. I would never talk to them. The only person I talk to is a production designer, and which is great in itself as well. But having one-on-one time with a director, it really, really helps to understand what their vision is and how you can help them, and what the concept art can do to help achieve that. Because I think every time you add another person in between you, it kind of dilutes the information that they're trying to give away. You're never going to be able to reconstruct someone else's vision 100%. So it's like a game of telephone. Like, you want to be as close to the source as you can. And talking with directors has also been really, really interesting for me, because lately I've been able to, read a lot more scripts. I've been able to give input on the scripts. I've been able to call out certain things in the films that I think will be a very impactful moment in terms of imagery. And as a studio lead, I'm now able to have a much larger presence in the creation of the films. So I now get asked more about the overall look, the overall direction for everything. And that's something that I really enjoy being a part of, and that I've always wanted to be a part of. And just as well as I was talking about before, like being able to read the scripts and pick the director's brain on why they have certain moments in there. That's something that is really important to me, because I used to be a writer and I want to get back into it one day. And being able to ask about things like that, I think it'll help me a lot to understand all other aspects of the creative process.
What do you see as being the key skills for a concept artist in dealing with film directors versus art directors?
Okay, so let's clarify by saying art directors in games, right? That's what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, art directors in games versus directors in film. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So, oh man, it's a tough one too. I would say for film, you have to be very fast, really fast, like some of the fast in the industry. You should be able to do like 2 to 3 keyframes a day, like being able to get them out quickly, knowing your workflow so that you, if you're ever in a creative challenge, you're not going to have trouble. You'll be able to find a solution instantly. I think in film, the stakes are much higher. In games, I was allowed to fail and recover really quickly. In film, if you fail, you have to find a way to fix it before you turn in your work. If you fail and you turn in work, you could be done. You don't get many chances. You could be lucky and on a project where, you could have a lot of chances, but you always want to play it more safe, I think, because the industry is more competitive in film than it is in games, because there's a much smaller amount of projects, and even smaller are the amount of projects that are really fun to work on, like the Star Wars, the Dune, any of those. So besides speed, I think in games, creativity kind of takes the highest place. It's like being able, if you're on pre-production in the game, you want to be able to supply a great amount of good ideas, like really interesting, thought out, unique ideas. And this is, again, only my experience. I don't really work on the games like, Call of Duty or Last of Us that are more about the realism of like a real world, real environment. Most of the games I work on involve like designing something far out there that we haven't seen before. And for that sort of game, it's very much about the new ideas you bring to the table and ways you can inspire the team. A lot of the time, the concept art we create, like, yeah, sure, it's it maybe will turn into something down the line, like some amazing piece of architecture. It could inspire a whole level design sometimes. But even more so, is to inspire the other people on the production. It's so that you can go into a meeting with the whole game studio and be like, here are some ideas. What do you guys think? Which one of these should we explore? And it's to create discussion, like really valuable discussion at the beginning of the game. So that's the game side, I would say, that's really important. And more on the film side, you should be able to communicate very, very, very clearly in film. Like, you have to be able to understand people. I think being charismatic really helps. I had to work on my own like people skills. When I started in school, I was an introvert, and I think I've actually like completely changed. Like, I used to be the person that doesn't talk to anybody, that just sits down and draws by themselves. I was like the weird kid. And I really had to get good at presenting. Like, I would present every day and try to find new ways of being able to understand people, putting yourself in other people's shoes and seeing it from other perspectives. That's something that's very important in film, because you have to one miscommunication could mean the waste of thousands of dollars. And you have to be able to understand you have to be able to know when you get it, like when you actually understand what they're saying. Because if you are on the phone with a director and you hang up, you might not be able to reach them for a day, a week, a month. You don't know when they're going to be available. So you have to make sure you understand exactly what they're coming across. I would say those are the most important things. There's other things that are more minor, but those are the most important things.
How do people develop that though? So I completely agree that communication thing, being able to like understand what someone's saying. Not everyone can do that, and for me personally, it's like I've had to sort of temper how I interact with people. Sometimes I get frustrated with people who don't understand what I'm saying, which I can understand. I speak fast. I've got a very thick English accent. However, like I understand not everyone it comes natural to. How is there a way to develop that? Because other than on the job, and like you said, film's cutthroat. You get it wrong once, that's it. You might be over. Is it a case of like just some people have got it, some people haven't, or is this something that people can develop?
Oh, it's 100% something you can develop. I was not a good communicator when I got to college. In fact, I was like probably shunned by most of my grade. I have only a few friends from my first term in college because I was a very strange person. I went to high school and there was a lot of like things I dealt with in my childhood that made me come out as a strange person at the time. And coming from a place in high school where no one did art, no one understood art, no one heard of concept art. No one understood what I like to do, why I was drawing in class. Coming from a place like that to go into a place like Art Center and brainstorm in Los Angeles of all places was like a brain shock to me. And it was like, wow, this is like the dream. This is like I'm going to paradise. And I was just strange. I was like super excited. I was like out of control. And at the same time, I was like really shy as well. Like I'd bottle things up. I wouldn't, if I had to present, which we did, I would be terrible. I wouldn't know the right words to say. And I think it's all by experience that I got better. It's by the one thing I really appreciated about going to school at Art Center. I eventually left. I dropped out of college, but I learned how to communicate, and that is something that they have done very well. The whole program is like visual communication. It's not just visual, but it's also about speaking to people and presenting. And there were so many classes where I had to present every single week. There's a point in time where I was presenting 3 times, every week just to explain my ideas. Sometimes there would be to teachers, to other classmates. It could be to other terms of people that would come in and be guest speakers. And I think that's something that really, really helped. I think over 2 years of doing 3 presentations a week, you're going to get really good at it. There's no way. If you don't get good, then something is wrong, like you're not approaching it correctly. But I approached it with the mindset that what can I do to be a better communicator, a better presenter? And if you ask people, like asking my teachers, like, hey, what would be the best thing to do here? What words should I use? Should I point to a slide, or should I just like not really look at it and look at the class? Things like that are really, really key. And asking for that advice and asking for that help and understanding that you can fail again, like in that area, and just learn and better yourself from it. So I definitely 100% think it's a learnable skill. Absolutely. You just have to go out and seek it for yourself.
Yeah, as I say, it comes with self-awareness, right? Being like, okay, this is something I am not good at. I need to improve on it. Just like you look at your art and say, this element of my art's not good. I need to improve on it. Because that is something overlooked, right? People do focus on the hard skills so much that the soft skills get overlooked.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And the issue is that if you could be one of the best concept artists in the world, and if people don't like you, you're never going to get a job. Actually, that's happened to a lot of people I know who are they're straight up not nice people. I could use a worse word, but they're just people that did not learn or even express interest in learning how to communicate with people. And because of that, they don't have many places that want to work with them. So it's a really, really big skill. It's very underplayed. And I think a lot of people need to take note, that is just as much of a skill as, growing your design sensibilities.
I think another key point in what you said that I would like to highlight is the feedback. Like you mentioned that you were getting feedback from your teachers and perhaps students and colleagues as well, because that's an important part of the self-awareness. Alex, what you mentioned as well, you won't know what you need to improve on unless you ask for feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
And find out your. I'd like to go a bit more into detail about Terraform Studios.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned at the beginning, and you mentioned a common question that, or some question that comes up from time to time is asking like, oh, are jack of all trades specializing? And that you said, no, we have specialists in each area. So talk about maybe your staffing strategy for the studio and the type of projects that you take on and how that matches up with your staffing and the challenges.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. And that's something I can talk about for a while. I'll try to keep it brief. When I started the studios for a variety of reasons, it's something that I had considered for a long time. For a couple of years, I've wanted to make this endeavor happen. And it just turned out to be the right time, in late February and early March. The right contracts were coming in, and I was sitting at home quarantined because of COVID, and all my friends were as well. And some of them wanted to change, and some of them wanted to start the studio. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to be the one to do this. And there's so many reasons on why we did it. It was to build. I think the biggest thing is that we wanted to contribute to a lasting platform, right? You have this feeling as a freelancer when you're jumping between projects that you're contributing to a film, right? You're loving it. You're making designs, you're working with these awesome people. But after that film is done, what happens? You're not it's gone. People could even forget about it, within a year. And all that work you put in, where did it go? It just, that's it. It's part of history now. And that was something that I eventually realized, and I started dreading. I was like, man, I could go and be a concept artist for the rest of my life and still love my job, but it's going to be essentially I'm not building something that's lasting unless you're one of those first people on a new IP that has as much impact as Star Wars, where you design the visual language like Ralph McQuarrie. It's rare that you get to do something like that. So it was well, this is a way that we can build a platform, me and my friends and the people that I trust and that I love to work with. We can build a platform that will not just be a design studio, but will be a place that we can explore different products, that we can sell things, that we can grow as artists, that we can inspire other people, that we can one day launch our own IPs from. And that is the biggest thing, is that down the line, this is going to be a studio that we can all build our own projects internally and then release them. And I needed a platform. I've always wanted to do that. And I've explored it so much in my personal work, but now it's something that there's an entity and I can see actual progress. I'm not just waiting for some studio to pick it up. I'm actually doing it. So that's one thing. The reason I chose the people I did to start the studio is that, and this is kind of my mantra for life as well. You want to surround people who inspire you, basically, who have a skill set and a knowledge and a grasp of life that you're like, wow, this person knows what's up. This person really, when I talk with them, I feel a connection. I feel like I want to learn more and I want to be better and I want to learn from that person. All the people I hired are people that I want to learn from. They're people that inspire me on the daily. There's people that I love the work they do. I want to be like them. I want to pick something up from them. And if I could wake up every day and talk with these people and work with them on projects, that would be a dream. That'd be amazing. And so I was like, well, let's do it. These are all people that I trust dearly. I've known them all for many years. I've worked with a lot of them in person around the globe. And I think as a business owner, it takes off a ton of stress. I'm not stressed now because I trust these people so much with what they do. They are the best at what they do. And sure, I can give advice and I have, I have a creative vision for the studio. For every project we have, I'm the art director of the path that we pave and the designs and everything. But I know that they will do a good job. I'm never taking on a project wondering, are we going to ace this? We're going to ace it. We're going to do the best job we can. and it's always going to work out because these people are people who I trust. So that's something that I really believe in for the studio. That's the reason I hired, people like Pablo Dominguez, who since I met him, he's only gotten better and better and better and learned new stuff. And every time he posts something, I'm inspired. And he's also one of my best friends. So, I wanted each of my hires to be someone that I trust, that I can confide in, that is really amazing at what they do. And that's why I have the team that I do.
Sounds like a lot of fun to work with that group. Are you all remote? Are you all over the world, or you're remote but in LA, or how?
Yeah, we're remote. We're all over the world. There's a few that are in LA. There's one in Russia, and one that is in London right now, actually. And there are many more that are dispersed throughout the world that are more like contractors as well for us. Mm-hmm. So, our team is growing. I would say we're probably not going to expand too much this year. It's going to be more next year that we expand, just because we've kind of gotten a hang of everything in the past couple months now. But it's going to be remote for a while. Right now I don't foresee a physical location because I want everybody to live the life they want to. I don't want to have to force people to come into LA and work in the studio, have to deal with the visa process. They can decide to live where they want to, work when they want to. As long as they get the job done, I'm happy and they're happy and the client's happy. At
this point, are you looking for employees? Are you looking for projects?
No, neither actually.
Neither.
We're completely booked, I'm happy to say. And there's kind of like a line of people that we want to work with down the line, but we can't take on anything else. I mean, I'm always happy to talk with people. Like, I've had meetings with clients that we might not work with till next year. And I would encourage, if anybody sees this and wants to reach out, please do. I always like exploring options. But right now we're booked, and we also can't take any more artists. And the same goes artists. I would say if you're an artist and you're hearing this and want to apply, don't apply yet. Wait till we have applications, because I've gotten so many emails right now that it's like we have too many people to even choose from. And at the time where we are open to hiring new people, I'll definitely make it known to the world.
Yeah. So what's next for the studio is right now you must be in the stage of the building it and getting projects out the door and delivered and that kind of thing. Is there, you mentioned a little bit, maybe it's an IP project, or is that something that's started yet? Or
there's a lot of stuff we have in the works. The things that people are going to see very soon are kit bash packs we've been working on. So we have a lot of packs in development, and they're all things that I think they're kind of packs that fill a niche that I think people will appreciate. One of them, to give people a sneak peek, is a pack specifically for Oculus Medium that will be a stamp pack. So there's not, a lot of people in my industry use VR. Some use Oculus Medium. I'm a huge supporter of Medium. It's something that it's actually run by Adobe now. I should say Adobe Medium. But it's an amazing program that I use almost every day for sculpture. And we developed a pack. I don't know if there's any other packs like this, but you basically just put it into Medium and you have all these different assets within the program ready to go. So that's one of the first packs we'll be releasing. We have many other niche packs that we're planning, some character packs too. And we have interviews on the way. We have tutorials on the way. There's some tutorials in development. So this is definitely going to go far beyond, what a normal studio would be. We want to support the community. And personally, I've been asked to do tutorials for such a long time, and I've always kind of pushed it off. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to do this. Like, too much stuff going on. Now I'm making time for it. I will have personal tutorials that I am releasing, and I'm looking forward to sharing those with people. Some are going to be about color. Some are going to be about composition and design fundamentals. Generally speaking, we're going to leave the technical stuff to other people, because there's a lot of tutorials on technical abilities and not many tutorials about philosophy and designing and things that are really important to me. Further down the line, IP development, 100%. All the artists are on board for that. People won't be seeing the results of that for a while, just going to say, but that is one of the reasons we founded the studio. So it's definitely going to be something to watch out for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. And there's some great experience that you've had in the past, both working in game and film, that I think a lot of artists will benefit from, not only like the tools that you're working on, but also the tutorials and that kind of thing. That's pretty cool. So there's you have your website, terraformstudios.com. People can also follow you and check out your work on ArtStation. And you did write a blog on Terraform Studios as well on ArtStation, so people can check that out and reach out to you there. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Finn. It's been great talking to you.
Dude, Kevin, Alex, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been an honor. I've had a really fun time talking with you guys. I hope we get a chance to do it in the future. It's been a blast for me.
Yeah, for sure.
See you on ArtStation.com, the global hub for creative professionals. You've been listening to the ArtStation podcast. Hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. And please leave a rating and review for the podcast. We promise we'll read them all. See you next time.